So you want to get started motovlogging in 2026. That's awesome, because I honestly think we need more people doing this, because the more voices out there, the merrier. But the thing is, to mimic my setup with multiple different cameras, filming in multiple different locations, it takes a lot of money. But the thing is, that's not what people like about motovlogs. They like the authenticity, they like people out doing stuff and having fun. And today, what we're gonna do is we're going to set you up with the simplest and cheapest setup humanly possible. So I have two real options represented by the GoPro Hero 13, which you can get for $320, and then we have the DJI Osmo Action 6. This thing is the newest and best camera that DJI has to offer, so it's a little bit more expensive at $380. And then this tape measure right here is going to be our stand-in for the Insta360 Ace Pro 2. The reason why I'm not considering this camera today is because the camera itself costs $400.
Mamma mia!
I want to keep these setups as close to $400 as humanly possible to get you the best possible video and sound. Now, it is worth pointing out that I am sponsored by DJI, and they did send me this camera, but I use action cameras literally every single day of my life. I would encourage you to take everything that I say with a grain of salt and take a look at all of the footage, because I'm going to have side-by-sides. I'm also going to have audio comparisons, so you can check all of this stuff out for yourself. If you're interested in anything that we show off in this video, there will be links to everything in this video linked down below. So we're going to get both of these cameras set up in what I consider the standard YouTube settings. Starting with the Action 6 here, all you got to do is go up, go over to 4K 30, then go to the standard thing over here and set that to ultra wide. That's going to give you the widest field of view, and you want to set rock steady on. Then you go over here. You're going to go to exposure. You're going to leave this all the same, except I like bumping it up to the maximum range because that helps at night and in low light. And then lastly, you're going to go down here to the image adjustment. I go -2 and -2. Which, there we go, fat fingers. -2 and -2. That helps soften some of the footage and make it look a little less action cammy. By the way, if you don't see those menus, you need to tap the Pro icon right here to turn on Pro mode. You don't need to worry about anything else. If you want, you can use the D-Log-M, which I do, but you can just set the color to normal 10-bit and it saves you a step in editing. Then with the GoPro, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go down to the video settings, we're gonna tap here. I'm going to switch it over to log. Again, that's the color profile that I like to use. We're going to set the resolution to 4K 30 frames per second. We're going to set it to super view, hyper smooth on. And then if you want to get fancy with it, you can change the bitrate. I would just leave it on standard. Honestly, there's no point. And then for you, you're just going to want to leave the shutter on auto. Last thing would be sharpness and denoise. Again, you just want to knock those down a little bit. I like medium on the GoPro. That feels good. But with that, you're ready to rock and roll. Now I'm gonna let you decide for yourself which one of these cameras you like the look of better, because one thing that I can say really positively about the GoPro is this thing looks phenomenal. For years, GoPro was the industry leader in image quality. The thing is DJI has really caught up, and nowadays with this giant white balance sensor on the front, I tend to think the color balance looks a little bit better to me off of this camera. The GoPro does feel a little bit hot. There's definitely a GoPro look that these cameras have. The thing is though, that kind of is the industry standard, so a lot of people are used to seeing it, and when they don't see it, it feels a little bit weird to them. So again, I'll let you be the judge of which one of these you like the look of more. However, one of the things we really need to consider is, because we're trying to do this on the cheap, which one has the better battery life? Because for $320 and $380, you just get the camera, a mount, and one battery. So which one lasts longer? They're both going to be running at 4K 30 frames per second, the exact same shutter speed and settings, and they're also on the high bit rate. And both these cameras are starting at 100%. So let's see which one dies first. And 1, 2, 3. Wow, that GoPro boot time is slow. All right, see you guys in probably like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, I don't know. Perfect timing. How far in was that? 88 minutes. Okay, it's been 145 minutes. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm moving on with my day. The DJI wins. This one was kind of a surprise for me. I was not expecting to have both of these cameras have such vastly different results on the exact same settings. And I can say from anecdotal experience, I almost never have to change a battery in one of these cameras throughout an entire day of filming. So even though you're not getting multiple batteries for this camera, you don't really need it. However, I could make the same argument about the GoPro because I don't actually film for all that long on the motorcycle. Most of the time, it's less than 40 minutes of vlogging that goes into a single video. One thing we haven't considered thus far is getting audio into the camera because sure, video and battery life is great, but to motovlog, you kind of need to be able to vlog. I always find the best audio comes from wired sources, which means that you need to pick up a mic and an adapter for the Osmo Action 6. To mimic my setup exactly would cost about $60, but it's worth pointing out that you can get USB-C mics for around 20 bucks. Then once you have the mic actually plugged in, you're gonna unlock a secret menu here. What you want to do is you want to set the channel to mono, then you want to set the gain, this is the most important, down to -20. That's going to give you a lot of audio headroom. Then you want to make sure that you turn off the automatic level controller. That way the camera doesn't override any of your settings.
And this is what my audio setup sounds like into the DJI. The reason why I really like this is because in reality, the audio sounds like this. It's actually really, really quiet. And this is nice because it allows me to go in and post and add a lot more volume and get it exactly the way that I want to. This is a lot more dialable of a sound. But to be honest, I don't actually do a lot with it. I just turn the volume up so that you can hear it. I find there's a really nice mix between my voice and the bike, especially if I start digging into it a little bit more. There's a lot more bike sound in here, and if I really wanted to get sophisticated with it, because I'm using a stereo mic, I could have one track be just my voice and one track that's a lot more bike presence, so you get more exhaust notes and I can mix those together. I still find the mono channel to sound just fine. And now let's switch over to the GoPro and take a look at that setup.
Similar to the Action 6, we need to stretch the budget for the GoPro. The only way to get wired mic audio into a GoPro is with a media mod, which costs about $80. But then you need a mic and an adapter, more on that in a second. You can get the adapter for $6, but the problem is it won't work with a high quality lav mic because they pick up too much signal. Funny enough, you need to get a mic that's built to be screamed at, so this is where this little Turtle Beach Xbox headset mic comes in. Believe it or not, when that 12-year-old on Fortnite called you a racial slur, he was probably using this microphone. Now, as far as the GoPro is concerned, there actually aren't any settings that you need to change, and that's why this cable right here is so important. You need to roll this volume knob down almost all the way, and then bring it back up just a hair, and that's basically as good as you're gonna get it. It's gonna take a lot of trial and error to make sure that your audio isn't clipping. Then once you find the sweet spot, go ahead and tape that so that that rolly wheel doesn't actually move. If you get it all right, it should sound like this.
The GoPro audio isn't bad. I want to make that very clear. It totally works, and I've used this setup for years. The thing that just annoys me though is GoPro uses this like auto gain control that's always on, and you can't disable it, which means that if I go quiet, there's a moment where my audio disappears almost entirely, and then the bike's audio comes up, and then it's just bike audio for a second, and then when I start speaking, it's constantly changing the volume of what's going on to try and keep it as close to peaking as humanly possible without peaking. Another thing that's bothersome is this whole setup is very prone to failure because there's a bunch of connection points. There's just a lot of extra steps, and if the audio disappears for whatever reason, it becomes disconnected from one of the cables, I lose all of the audio and the GoPro can't find the mic again. So the rest of the take is just cooked, whereas the Osmo will find it again. All right, let's see if that audio came through. I have to do this check every time I use a GoPro. I just find the audio a little too unreliable for me to head back home before I call it a day. And then it's just mic audio for a second, and then when I start speaking,
yeah, no, that's pretty good. That's not bad.
Changing the volume.
Little gained out, but it's not bad. Totally workable. Once again, I'm gonna let you guys decide which audio you prefer. But for me, I do like the Osmo Action 6 just because there's a lot more headroom in the audio. It allows me to tune it a little bit better in post so that I can give you guys a better sound. I will say that while I don't think the GoPro sounds as good, it does take less work. But at the end of the day, you now have a rock solid setup that you can use on any helmet for around $400. But let's start pushing the limits a little bit and see what we can get out of both of these cameras. The easiest way to get more cinematic looking footage off of an action camera is to match the shutter speed to 1/2 times the frame rate. So at 30 frames per second, that means the shutter speed needs to be 1/60. In order to do this, you'll need a set of ND or neutral density filters. These help control the exposure so the footage doesn't overexpose. You can get press-on filters like I have for the GoPro or screw-on ones like I have for the Action 6. Both types are available for both cameras, but I prefer the Action 6's threaded mount style, which allows you to maintain a better watertight seal than the GoPro's lens cover.
So even if you're not aware of it, this is the way that my footage normally looks. This is my typical setup, and honestly, I think it's worth a couple extra bucks. The reason why I include the ND filter for the motion blur is because if you look at the edges of the screen, right, the sides here by where my hand is, you're probably going to see a lot more motion, especially in the trees, that's smoothed out. It's a lot less choppy. Especially on YouTube, this is really, really handy because of the way the compression algorithm works. People are a lot less likely to notice the blocky artifacting if you have motion blur on, because that way it kind of just disappears into the background. Also, I tend to think it makes you look like you're going a lot faster.
Next, we have the square shooting modes. Both the Action 6 and the GoPro have square shooting modes, but only the GoPro can shoot at 5.7K. It doesn't actually increase the field of view though, so there's no real benefit other than having a little extra fidelity that'll end up getting lost in YouTube's compression algorithm. To get this one right, you're going to want to use something like DJI's FOV boost lens.
Also, one of the reasons why I really like the Action 6 over the GoPro is I can take it off the chin mount really easily to check the settings while I'm recording, because sometimes I'm like, I think I got it right, but I'm not 100% sure. You can't take the GoPro off the mount. So the reason why this setup is so cool is because it allows you to shoot horizontally, completely normally, as if, you know, I'm shooting a regular old YouTube video, and at the exact same time, I'm catching enough information to do a perfect vertical for something like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, wherever. By having this setup, I've essentially created two cameras in one that are recording at the same time. And it's not taking up that much more storage. This setup, honestly, is a freaking game changer, and I absolutely love having access to it. The only problem that I'll note is I can't use an ND filter on this big old lens, and that just means that I can't fix my shutter speed and get that nice motion blur we talked about earlier. If you're not using that though, this is freaking awesome, and this is basically your shooting mode that you want to be using 100% of the time.
Now yes, we have kind of blown away my $400 budget, but it's worth pointing out, you don't need any of these fancy mods. You can just film right off the camera with the settings that I showed you, and it's going to be just fine. This is just some extra stuff, a little bit of Salt Bae on top, just because, I mean, why not? If you're one of those people who's going to be doing long form and short form content, I highly recommend you take a look at this combo right here. But let's say that you wanted to try to get this done even cheaper. You want to be around $300 or maybe $250. Could you do it? And the answer is yes. And it's really not all that hard, because this right here is DJI's Osmo Action 4. And I could go get one of these at Target for $200 right now. This is 2 generations older than the 6, so it doesn't have the square mode, it doesn't have nearly as sophisticated white balance, but this still shoots easily as good as the GoPro 13. Let me show you.
So this is what the Osmo Action 4 looks and sounds like, and honestly, for most folks on YouTube, you're probably going to struggle to tell the difference. Don't get me wrong, there is absolutely a difference, and the 6 is much improved over this camera. but that's kind of like cinephile stuff. Some of that you don't really need. But most importantly is this camera sounds as good as my Osmo Action 6 does. It gets to use the exact same fancy hardware because the settings are basically identical for the wired mic setup. And that's why this is such a great budget option.
I just wanted to include this to remind you guys that you do not need the biggest and baddest thing out there. You just need something that's going to get you started. And that's what I wanted to do here today, is show you you can get started on the cheap doing some motovlogging in 2026. Hopefully this helps you guys out. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.